Hi, this is David with EV World News. We're talking about electric vehicles, green energy, and today we're going to talk about hydrogen. And I'm proud to have Mike Herzog, engineer, with me today in the
Hey,
studio.
David.
How's it going, Mike?
Great. How you been, man?
I've been doing good, doing good. Always fun, and we like to talk a little bit more technical on Wednesdays and see what we've got here. So this, we've had some news lately that Shell closed up all their hydrogen stations in California. Okay. And one of the problems with hydrogen is it's not cheap. I was reading something that was telling me that a tank of hydrogen was running 160 to $180 a tank. And it made it three times as expensive to fill up as if you were just buying gas. Now, in the United States, the only places you can buy hydrogen are pretty much in California. There's a couple of one-off exceptions in some other states, but Toyota has been the leader there, right, with the Mirai,
Mhm.
and but they've only sold that in California because it's the only place you could fuel it. Well, so now for 2025, Honda's coming out with something, and this has been kind of a notable thing in the EV space. Toyota's not been a big player, and Honda, while they've had an EV before, they kind of stopped doing it. And anyways, so now we've got something interesting. We have a plug-in hybrid Honda CRV. Now, what's kind of nice about this, what was my complaint always about the American auto manufacturers when it comes to, other than Tesla, when it comes to EVs? They make them ugly, right?
Ugly.
Yeah, and this is something the
It's a
foreign
real
companies
thing.
aren't
It's a
doing.
real thing, right? I mean,
Yeah,
they're
I don't think this is just me thinking. I will say this. I thought the Chevy Volt was a decent looking vehicle, but they
it was okay.
discontinued it in
It was okay.
2019.
Yeah.
Okay, that was a plug-in hybrid, and it was the only plug-in I think that Chevy had. And for some reason, they discontinued it.
Yeah.
I actually
I,
saw
I
one
I've
by.
always wondered the question, and people ask it like, I just want an EV that looks like a car, and it happens to be electric, but it looks like every other car on the road, and it has all the features and everything like that, but we can't seem to get it right.
Um, what's funny is I was watching. We had a guy on here from EVcars.com that's out in
Mhm.
Utah, and he's got a Cybertruck, and they're wrapping it, and the wrap makes it look like it's from the movie Cybertron. And it's really cool, but it's going to be really gaudy. I mean, you're going to be looking at this thing as it. I mean, not just because you would look at it a
You're
Cybertruck
going to look at
anyway,
it anyway. You're going to
but
look at
it's
it
this
anyway.
is going to be really over the top. He's done a couple of over the top wraps. He's got a Model S Plaid that where the price dropped so much he couldn't afford to sell it, so he wrapped it and he drives it around, to advertise for the company. And anyway, so he's kind of doing the same thing with this Cybertruck, but it is kind of crazy. But anyways, yeah. So hydrogen certainly has hit some bumps in the road. And when Shell shut down all those hydrogen stations, it wasn't just in the U.S. Other companies in Europe did the same thing. And so it's not been a great thing for hydrogen. So this was kind of positive news because I have people all the time come up to me. It's like, oh, hydrogen is going to replace EVs anyways, right? And I'm just never
It's
real
the
sure.
rub on hydrogen's always been the biggest knock against EVs is charging, right? Hey,
Right,
how am I going to charge it? How am I going to charge it quickly? And you look at a hydrogen, isn't that just exacerbating the problem? I mean,
maybe,
you can find a wall plug anywhere, and at the end of the
right.
day, I can plug in. It's going to take me 2 days to charge, but I can do it. But the availability of hydrogen is just one of those people don't have it. It's not an available thing.
Well, you and I were talking about apartments last week, and one of the things we were talking about was level one charging and just a basic wall plug. You get about 5 miles of range every hour plugged in. So if you plugged in, just thinking like at a hotel or an apartment or whatever, every night you get 40 to 60 miles of range. It's not a crazy amount. It's certainly not filling up your EV, but it's certainly enough to get it to a supercharger somewhere, right?
Yeah.
Because this is one of the things like people always talk about. There's no charging. Well, there's an electric outlet. The electric outlets are far more common than gas stations, right? But the one thing that hydrogen kind of has going for it is essentially the hydrogen pumps look just like a regular gas station.
Fast.
You fill it the same way. You have the same convenience of pulling through. So if you have a trailer, it's convenient. And I think hydrogen is going to have some applications in aviation. and it's going to have some applications probably in big ships.
Yeah.
I'm just not convinced that it's going to be as big in cars as some people hope it to be. But you never know. It'd be great if it was, I suppose. But
It's not a bad thing, and we'll see. The market will be the market, and the market will play out, and what's the cheapest, most effective, most desirable, everything like that is going to rise to the top. But I just can't get past it's another layer of infrastructure that we have to put on
right,
top of everything.
I know. And right now we're having enough issues with electrical infrastructure, right?
Yeah.
Well, anyways, here is this Honda CRV, and I'm going to say, in all fairness to Honda, it's a nice looking vehicle.
Hmm.
And they're sitting at a hydrogen filling station, although I can't imagine where this is, or if this doesn't appear to just be this could just be a concept drawing, but it looks very realistic, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Let's see, view photos. Let's see what else we get. Um, I mean, it's obviously, even for a Honda CRV, it's much nicer than when I think of a CRV, what they look like. This is,
That's the CRV's changed a lot over the years.
yeah,
I mean, it's almost the size of what a Pilot used to be, a decade ago, and where it's at. So they've done some nice things with it. I think.
yeah. So anyways, this compact SUV has a hydrogen powertrain with plug-in capability. The Honda says has a peak output of 174 horsepower and 229 pound-feet of torque. Let's see. Battery pack will provide 29 miles of EV range and can be leased in California later this year. Obviously, it's going to be a California-only vehicle. It's the only place where there's any hydrogen. But that 29 miles just seems kind of low because we were looking at this a little bit earlier. And well, this was from Car and Driver. The Honda CRV is currently our favorite compact SUV. Its powertrains include a 190 horsepower Turbo 4 or an optional 204 horsepower hybrid. This adds a third powertrain of a hydrogen fuel cell system with plug-in. Now, I'm a real big fan of plug-in hybrids. Now, the big drawback that typically happens, especially in fleet situations with plug-ins, is people never plug them in. They just go by gas like they would normally, and
Yeah.
so they never have any fuel, and then you're just basically kind of wasting the capabilities. But this has a 17.7 kilowatt hour battery in the floor to provide extra juice. It probably helps accelerate the vehicle. It probably accelerates on the electric. But it's kind of a weird deal that we were both thinking that 17.7 ought to give it closer to 50 to 60
Well, and
mile
even
range.
even conservatively, right? I mean, you should be 50. 50 would be very reasonable.
Yeah, 50 would be reasonable. 29 just seems really low. I'm not sure why that is the range of this vehicle. But with the hydrogen, it has a range of 270 miles of driving. Now, its estimates compared to gas would be 61 city, 52 highway, and 57 combined. Now, we were talking about this earlier. It's like how frequent are these hydrogen stations? Could you imagine buying one of these? Or I guess you can only lease them. They don't actually sell them.
Yeah.
So, you've got to be close to a hydrogen fueling station. Because that 29-mile range just on the EV portion isn't huge, that's for
That's
sure. Now, if you're
not going to
only
get you very. At the end of the day, that's not going to get you very far for
no,
3 hours worth of charging or whatever it is. That's not going to take you very far.
I like this paint color. It is really sharp looking for a gray.
Hmm.
I think that's a good look. But anyways, it's just they got some nice things that they're making it nice looking. This one, every hydrogen powered is touring trim, digital gauge cluster, 9-inch touchscreen, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, 12-speaker Bose system, heated front seats. I could see it being popular just because it has nice features in the base
Yeah.
model.
Yeah.
You know, but it's just an interesting that they're going to that spot. Bill's always complaining that people that have plugins never remember to plug them in, and that makes for a challenge too, even though electricity is the cheapest source of fuel that you could put in a vehicle.
I always liked the idea of the hybrid plugins and what is just as a entry point into
Mhm.
electric vehicles, and you start to build some of those habits in for most people's daily driving. I mean, it's if you remember to plug it in every night, that's more than you need in what it looks like. But
Well, and you
it's
think even if you're traveling, then you can fill up with gas, then you get to a hotel, you can plug in at the hotel overnight if it's got level
yeah,
one charging.
and it's a one car solution for folks. It's
Right.
you have a city driving car and you also have a vehicle. All right, I feel comfortable. I can take this out on the highway for a day's worth of driving and not be stuck at the where does there happen to be a fast charging station and can I get time on it and what does it look like? But sounds like
I,
Honda's just rolling the dice and see what combos we can come up with.
yeah,
See what
well,
sticks.
maybe they're not planning on making that many. I mean, maybe they're
Yeah.
only planning on making
I mean,
10,000 of them.
the idea of like a concept car. I mean, this is a concept class,
Mhm.
hybrid electric plug-in or a hydrogen hybrid electric plug-in.
I'm sure hydrogen will be a lot cheaper of a fuel once there's widespread adoption, but it can't keep costing three times as much as gas to
No,
and be ever be viable.
yeah, and you and I talked a little bit earlier too. One of the other options out there that comes up is compressed natural gas. CNG
Mhm.
powered vehicles. I know locally our gas source, metropolitan utilities, they have a lot of those vehicles, for their own personal fleet that they've used. Our local buses are now CNG, but it's the same deal. They have a central refueling hub. You have to go back to this spot. We're going to go there every night. There's infrastructure and everything like that. But as a potential, here's another alternative source that we could look at. That one's out there too. But I know that's been slow on the draw as well.
Okay, let's go on to our next topic for today. And this one is Volkswagen is backing a new automaker in China that is debuting the first EV with a sodium ion battery. And this car company is called Yiwei, Yiwei, Yiwei. And let's see here. These are pictures of the proposed cars. And what's interesting, sodium ion battery doesn't use cobalt, doesn't use lithium. They're cheaper batteries to make. And they're claiming here that it can recharge 10 to 80% in 20 minutes. We were talking about this a little bit earlier. The article doesn't give us the kilowatt hour capacity of the battery. So I don't know if it's a 10 kilowatt hour, 100 kilowatt hour. We're going to assume it's somewhere in between those two numbers.
Yeah.
But, it's kind of irrelevant if you can charge 10 to 80% if it's a small battery. So I guess that's kind of a piece. But the sodium ion batteries are cheaper to make than lithium ion and are more sustainable to produce. It has a lot lower environmental impact than extracting lithium, you know, and we're not having child slave labor in the Congo. Get our cobalt. We're not, you know, moving
Yeah.
100 million tons of ore or whatever it is. People always like to put in the comments on my videos that, how we're destroying the earth mining lithium. And I'm like, well, what are we doing with
It's nice
gas?
to see one of these actually hit the market in bulk and actually be mass produced because that's I've been following battery technology for a while and boy every couple of months somebody has a new chemistry that comes out and so this is the one that's going to do it and it just never pops up. You never see it actually be mass produced in a space like this. So
Well, Cattle, the biggest battery maker, is building a plant right now to just make sodium ion batteries.
that's
And
cool.
I'd like to see production of this in the US because then we're not, buying this stuff from China, and it makes it a lot easier for people to qualify for the federal incentives. There's a lot of
Mhm.
benefits if we could make that here because we don't need the natural resources, and it would make people less dependent on lithium, which would then make lithium prices crash, which would then make the lithium batteries cheaper too.
Makes those cheaper too. I'm curious to learn more about sodium ion because I have to imagine it's just less power density than
I,
lithium.
I'm
So
thinking that too. So I'm
Otherwise,
kind of
what's the
wondering,
disadvantage? If it's cheaper and
it doesn't
recharges
catch on
faster,
fire.
and yeah,
It's not as flammable.
yeah. I mean, and that's been one of the issues with lithium forever too, is just the chemistry within that battery, like the quick charging, I mean, hurts it. I mean,
Right.
it really degrades the battery, what we want it to do. So you wonder if sodium ion helps in that front too. Now it's interesting they said 10% to 80%, not 100%, which is, along the same lines as lithium, like, nah, just for the life of the battery, don't take that thing to zero and don't charge it to 100 every day. Operate in that kind of safe zone in the middle. So wonder
Well,
if
you've heard the parking
sodium
lot
ion.
analogy with the batteries, right?
Say that again?
You've heard the parking lot analogy with the batteries before, right? On the,
Yep.
on the charging it.
I like that one.
It's
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just that once you get above 80%, the electrons just don't know where to go.
There's not, yeah, you have to drive around and look for a parking spot. Yeah.
Yeah, and when it's below that, it's like an empty parking lot. Um, it's kind of an interesting
Mhm.
analogy, but some of these things have to work. It's just a matter of if the sodium ion is cheaper for the same kilowatt hours, but it's heavier, then maybe you have to deal now with having heavier batteries. We already have a problem with changing tires out.
Yeah.
They're making specialized tires now for EVs just that won't disintegrate from the weight because the
It's
cars are heavier.
driving EV. You're driving a large vehicle. I mean, it is noticeable. My wife drives a big old honking SUV with a traditional internal combustion engine. Compared to my little EV, it's like, ooh, this is easy to handle. This is driving a toy kind of thing. It's just the weight
Really?
is so much.
One of the things I've heard Elon Musk talk about, he says with the Tesla Model X, you can't roll it over because the center of gravity
The
for the
center
battery
is
is so
so,
low,
yeah,
the vehicle just won't roll over. They've tried. They've
yeah. It's
really
always
tried hard to
gonna,
make them roll,
yeah,
and they just can't do it. It said you could potentially roll up on the side, and it'll just flop right back onto all four wheels. And it's really kind of interesting to look at that. I don't think that was an intentional safety feature, but it's something that just kind of happened,
yeah,
as part of
yeah.
it. But and our next story is about a company called 24M claims 1,000-mile battery is nearly here, and let's just see where we're at with this. So it's many 24M is one of many companies to form commercial and has formed commercialized ideas from the fertile brain of a Yet Ming Cheng, an MIT professor. And let's see. Sorry, I kind of want to sneeze here. Um, 24M answers the world's needs for affordable energy storage by offering a revolutionary battery manufacturing product design technology set. Oh, God. By reinventing today's battery products and manufacturing methods, they solve the critical decades-old challenge associated with the world's preferred energy, you know, reducing high costs, improving performance, safety, and recyclability. I mean, too many buzzwords in here.
I
You,
like
you know,
we just talked about it. This is the
you
latest,
know,
greatest. Oh, we're on the doorstep. I mean, check the box. I improved every single thing with this. It's cheaper, more energy, easier to recycle, less exotic materials. Like,
yeah,
awesome.
5 years ago, 24M shipped its first batteries to commercial customers. These deliveries represent a significant milestone in the 24M mission to scale its unique, capital efficient, low cost approach to advance lithium ion battery manufacturing. It's like, it doesn't really tell us anything.
No,
Um,
I love to see innovation. I love to see that people are looking at this and trying to make these things happen. But it's just I've seen it before. I've seen these claims before, and we're going to keep seeing them.
okay, so now here's something interesting. The company has a product called Eternal Light, which is a transformative new electrolyte developed specifically for lithium metal batteries. The proprietary liquid electrolyte formula will enable significant improvements in the cycle life and rate capability of lithium metal batteries for electric vehicle, energy storage, and consumer applications. Last week we were talking about these switching graphite anodes to silicon anodes, but the key was the silicon anodes technically were more volatile, and they'd come up with a way to reduce the volatility
Okay.
of that, whatever reaction is going on there. Because that was a reason why we don't use silicon anodes now, was because it would be easier for it to catch fire. And it's, nobody really goes into much. Oh, here we go. So their unique electrolyte Eternalite is combined with Impervio, which is also trademark, solves these challenges. They should have called it Impruvio. The combination is a low-cost way to prevent all metal dendrites and achieve excellent cycle life with consistent and low electrical resistance to cathode active materials. Historically, liquid electrolytes used with lithium metal anodes had poor cycle life, particularly with rapid charging. What's kind of interesting about that? I was reading another article earlier, was talking about, somebody was saying they bought a used Nissan Leaf battery, and they're using it for energy storage in their house.
Mhm.
And this battery is about 50%, but it was saying that because it had been rapid charged before, and when you're no longer rapid charging, you're just taking general power that's coming from the solar panels in your house and running it through the system in your house, it puts power into that battery so slowly compared to the rapid charging that that battery should last pretty much forever. It should put no wear and tear on the
Yeah, yeah.
battery,
Like you just
hardly at all.
significantly increased its half-life by just
Yeah.
slow. It's a trickle charge. You're just keeping it alive. I mean, the idea is it's there in an emergency, but we're keep it level once you get
You
it up
know, we've seen some of these articles about Hertz selling a whole bunch of their EVs off, but they've been renting them to Uber drivers. And the Uber drivers have been taking them to superchargers all the time. So the batteries in those have taken a lot more wear and tear than an EV battery normally would.
there. Hmm.
So like you level 2 charge, but those are level 3 charging. These other guys are talking about taking their solar, and it's even less than level 1 charging. And
Yeah, yeah.
so you're making the batteries last longer. And so these guys on this Eternalite with Impervio, they're talking about making it have better cycle life because in the rapid charging conditions. So
Yeah.
the idea is it's going to improve it for how long it lasts in rapid charging. But it's kind of interesting. We feel it can deliver a cost-effective and safe 1,000-mile per charge battery pack. And we were discussing this too. I mean, Elon says, hey, we could do 1,000-mile range. It's just you're going to be putting a 300 kilowatt hour battery in the car. How much battery you want to pay for it? Because like a Tesla long range has 100 kilowatt hour. So
Hmm.
you add what? Let's say you added another $30,000 to the cost of the car. Well, how many people really need a 1,000-mile range?
Yeah.
And so it's not.
That's the engineer in me coming out. There's always an answer, and what it looks like. And this is the old engineer joke. Glass half full. The pessimist sees it. It's half empty. The optimist, it's half full. The engineer, the glass is twice as big as it needs to be. Like you don't need a glass that big, and that's the
Right.
question. Sure, yeah, 1,000 miles, that'd be great, but do you need that? And it's the same thing. A lot of smart engineers in the world can figure this out. We can figure anything out, but it costs you. I mean, it's going to add cost to everything if you want to do it. And is that the balance of cost and performance and effectiveness? And I don't know.
In gas cars, generally the gas tank is designed to be big enough to give the car a 300 some odd mile range. Okay. In the EV space, they're generally doing, the sweet spot seems to be 260 to 280-mile range. Okay. And, that has to do with cost. And it's just like in the gas cars, they could put a bigger gas tank in there, but it doesn't really seem practical.
Yeah,
And,
it's to what end?
yeah.
What are you getting out of that?
So the whole idea of going to those bigger batteries now, if they can get 1,000 miles of range in a battery the same size as a 100 kilowatt hour battery, and they can go from getting 3 to 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour to 10 miles per kilowatt hour, then they've done something, right?
And that's it. Yeah.
Then they've really accomplished something. And I see some tech in the hybrid space with improvements in gas and diesel power that may be able to combine with hybrid to make a lot of things more efficient, but
Hmm.
you still can't create energy out of nothing, so that there has to be something. And some of these are just, I guess one of the things I see, electric engines, when they take the power from the battery, supposedly are about 80% efficient at using the energy that comes from the battery. And gas engines are about 25%. I think diesel is like 30 or 31. And, I've seen some tech it's been invented, it just hasn't been able to be mass produced yet, that could bump both of those numbers up to above 50%, like
Wow.
51,
Hmm.
52%. And so that would effectively double the range of a gas powered hybrid. And, you know, that would be pretty damn impressive because once again, if that's the case, then you cut emissions in half, right?
Hmm.
So, and thus burning it at a higher efficiency also increases and
It
doubles
just burns through
emissions.
the cat. Yeah. I
I
don't
mean,
know.
I imagine there's only so much emissions, and maybe if it burns more, maybe there's less emissions.
Yeah. It's a
You know,
a cleaner cycle that it goes through and
yeah,
more
cleaner burn.
less waste.
So,
Mm.
it's some, interesting food for thought. I mean, I guess anything, if the sole purpose of doing EVs were emissions, that would be, you know, somewhat of a solution.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting, right? How you frame the question, like what problem are we trying to solve? And it opens up a much different toolbox than you might be looking at.
To me, I look at it, EVs are a little funner to drive. They are, in theory, cheaper to operate, and at some point they're going to be cheaper to manufacture than gas cars.
Hmm.
And so you're going to have both a car that's less expensive, it's more economical to operate, and it's better for the environment, you know. And so maybe you're not big on the last one. Maybe you don't care about the environment, which I don't think there's anybody who really doesn't care about the environment, but there's a lot of different opinions on what's really going on, how much is man-made and how much is just, solar
Sick.
flares or
Yeah.
what's going on, cyclical. Um, and, you know, the one thing with the EVs, there's no question that they're going to be cheaper to operate and cheaper to maintain. I mean, I think that's kind of a pain, having to get oil changes in a gas
Mhm.
car all the time. You know, I don't know what to really
Well,
know about.
I haven't seen that, the long term on EVs and motor maintenance and electric motors. Normally, those things have a pretty good life
Right,
because there's good wear and tear. But I mean, everybody who's had a car in the past 20 years, how many serpentine belt? We
right,
talked about Hondas earlier. Man, that thing goes at 110,000 miles, and you just plan on that. Okay, here's my maintenance that's coming up. That thing's going to go.
right. And you don't really have that on the EVs.
Mm-mm.
All right, our last topic today, we're going to talk about a new Renault. They're making a smaller EV, and they're calling it the Supermini. It's an all-electric 5 E-Tech. I'm not sure exactly what that means, but it's a cute looking car. It's obviously going to be small. It's going to be a lot like a Mini Cooper, but probably even smaller. What's interesting, I've owned a Mini Cooper before. It was for one of my kids, and I was really quite comfortable and really enjoyed driving the thing. It was
Mm.
really much roomier inside. The boxy shape of the vehicle really gave it a lot of headroom, and even for somebody tall like me, it was quite comfortable to drive. But long before the debut of an all-electric version, the original Renault 5 was produced from 72 to 94. They built 5.5 million vehicles over what, 22 years. So that's about 250,000 a year. The Super Mini was wildly popular in France, and it was best-selling car from 72 to 86.
It's a pretty
It's
good
quite a few
run.
years. Yeah, best-selling car for 14 years. Following two generations of designs include several variants and an Alpine hot hatch. The last five rolled off the assembly lines 30 years ago. Its original 70s version of the five turned heads with its original modern designs, one of the first ever Superminis, offering customers a compact, cost-friendly option. I think that's kind of a cool one to try to bring back. They unveiled the 5 E-Tech in Geneva. See if they get much information about it. See, a 2.54-meter wheelbase, cargo capacity of 326 liters, weighs about 3,300 pounds, but that's pretty light for an EV. So maybe it won't be so hard on the tires. Let's see here. Oh, it's going to have bidirectional charging, so it'll have vehicle to grid and plug and charge capabilities. We've talked about that a little bit recently. Oh, let's see what we got here. They've got a 52 kilowatt hour battery delivering 249 miles of range. It can tow a trailer with a capacity of 500 kilograms. Well, they didn't forget that 249-mile range if you're towing 1,100 pounds. Yeah, let's see. It'll be competitively priced at around $27,100. Be built in France and official launched in September of 24. I think that's pretty cool.
I like it. I like it. Yeah.
I was telling you about the BYD launched a $15,000 EV, which won't be sold in the United States. Maybe this one, the thing is, I don't know if I've really ever seen Renaults for sale in the United States. I'm sure there's been, but it's just so uncommon. Some of these ideas are, well, maybe it's just a distinctly European thing. The Europeans have adopted EVs on a much higher scale than the United States has, that's for sure.
They have, and the idea of those smaller cars, I mean, it's better suited for European driving. And you get into any type of urban environment or city center, I mean, it's better to have a smaller vehicle in those places.
Oh, well, anyways, that's all we've got for today, Mike. Appreciate you coming on and doing the show with
me. David. It's we'll try to stay warm the rest of the day here.
Oh yeah, we have had some wacky weather where what do we have, about a 60-degree temperature swing or 70-degree temperature
70,
swing.
70-degree.
Yeah, we went from 80 degrees down to below 10.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was just crazy. Anyway.